They drift back to pass, pressured in the end zone. That's a safety. It was Neville Gallimore with the initial pressure. Finished off by Keir Thomas.
Yeah.
It's a 1-point game.
What we're talking.
Yeah. Nick Sirianni made an absolute baffling decision in the game, in the playoff game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Los Angeles Rams. He has to be extremely fortunate that his stupidity did not backfire on him in the end, because his management in this game was atrocious. We're getting into some of his other awful decisions, but we really need to analyze why in that spot calling a pass was a horrible, and I truly mean it, horrible idea. Basically, the Eagles had a 16-13 lead against the Rams, and they forced a punt on the Rams. 4th and 2 at the Rams' 38-yard line, and the Rams punted. Unfortunately for the Eagles, the Rams pinned the Eagles at their own 4-yard line, so it's going to be tough. Fortunately for the Eagles, though, Saquon Barkley goes up the middle for 4 yards to the Philadelphia 8-yard line to give them breathing room. Unfortunately, though, it's still 2nd and 6 and you're still backed up. The goal on this drive really has to be to at the very least gain yardage, so that you're not pinning, so you're not giving the Rams good field position or points, in this event, because obviously a safety gives them 2 points and gives them the ball in decent field position, and punting out of your own end zone is going to give the Rams the ball around midfield and only, 15 yards away from potentially tying up the game with a field goal. And a safety is horrible because it trims your lead to 1 and you have to give the ball back. So you have to be very careful in the spot as to what you do. So there's a few factors that we have to dissect here that make this, a horrible decision to have Jalen Hurts throw a pass. First of all, Jalen Hurts was getting pressured like crazy this game. On the first touchdown drive, he didn't get pressured. However, he took a 9-yard sack on their second drive that basically killed the drive. On this drive, Hurts did not take a sack. However, he still took other sacks, throughout the game. This sack right here, 3rd and 8, the Rams 30, took them out of field goal range and forced the Eagles to punt. So that's already 2 sacks. To end the half, and we'll get back to this later, Hurts wound up taking back-to-back sacks. And this was a strip sack. So Hurts was getting pressured like crazy all game. On this drive, Hurts took another sack, but they were lucky enough to stay in field goal range. Hurts, I think, already had 5 sacks at that point. The Rams' defensive line was really getting to Hurts, and Hurts was not playing well on this day. So you have to be very careful, obviously, as to what you do. So when you're pinned deep in your own territory, running the ball is the smart thing to do, which is what they did on their first drive. You run the ball and try to gain some yardage. Try to get some breathing room so that when you're punting, you're not punting out of the back of your own end zone. Try to maybe get a first down, but do low-risk stuff. And the fact that you did this after Barkley ran up the middle for 4 yards makes this even stupider. If Barkley got stuffed for a loss or no gain, I would actually get it. But if he gets 4 yards on the remaining 2 plays, he has a first down. 4 yards, in 3 plays each, that would get you 12 yards. That's a first down. And Saquon Barkley was having a really good game, including rushing for a 62-yard touchdown in the first quarter. He was really torching the Rams defense. And it's like, why not use him? Why use Hurts, who was getting pressured like crazy? And why let him take a sack in the end zone? knowing that the result of it is a safety, which forces you to give the ball back and trims the lead to just one. And and this decision almost came back to bite the Eagles in a massive way. The Rams had the ball, and got the ball at their own 35-yard line because again, on a safety, it's a nice kick, but then they always get to make a return. Fortunately, though, for the Eagles, they forced a fumble on Kyron Williams and were able to get a field goal off of it. Then um, strip sacked Matthew Stafford, and gained another field goal. But this was far from the only baffling decision that Nick Sirianni made during the game. For some reason, on 2nd and 7 at the Philadelphia 33-yard line, he ordered a pass when Saquon Barkley likely could have gotten him close to the first down line. You want to kill as much clock as possible, and even though the Rams have 3 timeouts, you really need a first down. And, why do this? Either it's an incomplete pass and you give them a timeout, or it's a sack where you really have no shot of getting a first down. And you're only up by 6 points anyway. It's like, why? Why would you do that when the Rams had already scored a touchdown, and another touchdown likely puts them ahead with the extra point? It was a really bad sack too, and you have to blame Hurts a lot for his performance in this game. But it's like, why even, run the ball? Because Saquon Barkley, again, was running really well this game. Why deviate from a winning formula when Hurts was not playing well? That was really a really baffling decision that almost cost the Eagles in that game. In this spot, after Stafford got sacked for 9 yards, why didn't Sirianni call a timeout? Why did he let the clock run? The Rams didn't call a timeout because they wanted the clock to run. They knew that they didn't want to give the ball back to Philadelphia. They knew they didn't want to give the ball back to the Eagles if they scored with a lot of time left for the Eagles to have a chance to walk it off with a field goal. So the Rams are smart and they let the clock run down because they knew that it was basically they had to either get into the end zone or get it really close with only 30 seconds left. So they were going to let the clock run down and not give the ball back to Philadelphia. Why didn't the Eagles, in that spot, call a timeout to ensure that if the Rams scored a touchdown, that they would have enough time to get the ball back? At this point, the clock was starting to work against Philadelphia. And I'm not even sure if the Eagles, used any timeouts. They certainly had timeouts, at that spot. They might have even had all 3 timeouts. I'm not sure. But whatever it is, I mean, the Eagles had a timeout. You want to burn a timeout so that because if the Rams don't get the first down, then the game is over and the Eagles win. But if the Rams do get a first down or score a touchdown, you want enough time to march down the field and walk it off with a field goal, considering that you really have to get it within 45 yards, considering the struggles of Jake Elliott and considering the weather because this game occurred in a blizzard. The end of the first half, I wasn't crazy about being content with the 13-10 score and going into the halftime break when the Eagles likely would have needed 20 yards to get a field goal, and when Jalen Hurts was not playing well all game, and when Barkley is unlikely to rip off a 20-yard run out of nowhere. And there's a lot of risks involved with calling a timeout there. But then why call a timeout at 3 seconds and have a Hail Mary after Hurts had already gotten strip sacked and the Eagles were very lucky to even come away with the ball? Why not at that point just go into the half and not risk anything? Because that could be a strip sack for a touchdown that could let the Rams enter the halftime break with a 4-point lead. Why even do that? That seemed kind of stupid. And surely enough, Hurts did get sacked. It's just that luckily enough, it was too late at that point to really, for the Rams to really get any good field position off of that. But, that was crazy. And, that was, questionable management. There were a lot of really questionable things that Nick Sirianni has done against the Rams. But, as I'll say, Sirianni, has made a lot of baffling decisions this whole season. A lot of them decisions this season. Probably the worst coach season of any NFL team that wound up winning a Super Bowl. So it's really no surprise that Sirianni coached a terrible game against the Rams.